Thank you so much, Femke, for joining. Actually, we recorded this session 1 month earlier due to some technical issue. We had to do this again. So, welcome again.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be back. No worries.
Great. Thank you so much because I was so worried that how it will be. No, no, everything is fine. So, Femke, we know about you and we know about your UX design community, and I'm in your community, so I learned a lot from there. Almost everyone who works in UX industry in Bangladesh actually know you.
Oh, that's so kind. That's so nice.
and, and I actually shared your video contents in my with my local
Thank
community. So they
you.
really loved it, and it's very quality content. Okay, those who don't know who Femke is, Femke was a product designer in Uber, and currently she is leading the Gusto design team. And Femke, would you please tell about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction. As already mentioned, I started my product design career as a designer at Uber, which, is a huge company that has a global design team all over the world. And I worked there from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, which was a really awesome experience. Eventually, I transferred to the Uber Eats team in Canada. So I worked on Uber Eats as well as the Uber riding experience. And then after doing that for a few years, I joined a Canadian fintech company called Wealthsimple. And most recently, I just joined Gusto, which is a American company that creates HR and payroll software for small businesses. And I'm leading the design on the app ecosystem team, which is a lot of fun. Just started like 4 months ago, so it's still really fresh for me. But yeah, in addition to that, as I mentioned, I'm living here in Canada. Maybe you've seen my YouTube channel where I teach design. Currently, I'm working on a course on product strategy for designers, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, happy to chat and talk today.
Yes, thank you so much for mentioning the course because I will link it in the description below.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Awesome, really awesome. I checked it out recently. So,
Thanks.
Femke, are you originally from Canada or you moved to Canada later?
I did. I moved to Canada from the Netherlands, but
Mm.
I originally am from New Zealand. So my parents were born and raised in the Netherlands, but they immigrated to New Zealand, and that's where I was born and raised. And so I think I was 23 or so when I decided to leave New
Mhm.
Zealand,
Right.
and move to Amsterdam, which was a super cool experience. And so yeah, I've lived in three continents now, which is really, really awesome.
Great. So you joined Uber, and where you actually showed how you presented your portfolio,
Yeah,
design task, and others. And in Bangladesh, we followed your technique. We are following your technique and trying to
awesome.
improving our skill.
Thanks.
Okay. So first of all, our main question will be on portfolio, how
Yeah.
we can represent our portfolio. Suppose
Mm-hmm.
from a product designer perspective,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to work in a startup or in a remotely or maybe sometimes in Uber, and how should we prepare our portfolio? Where should we concentrate on?
Yeah, yeah. I think the best thing that any designer can do is to really position their portfolio for the role they want. So, thinking a little bit about what is your ideal design job, right? Where do you want to be working? What kind of company is that? Is it a big tech company? Is it a small startup? Maybe you want to work at an agency. And so, how can you position yourself in your portfolio for that kind of role? So, let's say you're a designer that's really interested in working on B2B, like enterprise software. How can you set yourself up for success so that when a hiring manager comes to your portfolio, it's really clear that you are the best person for this job? So perhaps that could be highlighting any work that you have in the B2B enterprise space. Maybe it's also about how you introduce yourself on your portfolio, how you talk about yourself, your about section. In addition to that, I think highlighting your superpowers is also really strong. We're all good at different things. So whether it's prototyping or user research or conceptual design, what are some of your superpowers that you really enjoy and that you're good at in the design process, and making sure that that comes through in your portfolio, both in the case studies and then also potentially on your about page. Maybe you could list your skills there. So it's all about kind of differentiating yourself, standing out, and positioning yourself and the work for the kind of role you want, to make it easier for hiring managers to come to your website and say, this is the designer I need.
So do you think that if I apply for a startup or maybe in a big tech company like Uber or big agency, so the portfolio would be quite different? I mean, what are the difference in like Uber or a small startup?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something that big tech companies look for is your ability to overcome complex problems and do that really complex problem solving. So do you have experience that showcases and demonstrates that kind of strategic product design thinking versus, let's say, an agency where they might be looking for someone that's just really strong in interaction design? And so thinking a little bit about what does the company need and what is the value that I can provide to the company, and sort of tailoring it to meet those requirements.
I have worked for startups and and I have led their team for around 3 or 4 years, and still now I'm actually giving the consultancy service to many startups.
Cool.
The problem is startups don't have that much funding, that they want to hire one designer and
Yeah.
to give it all the work to him, that okay, you will do the rest.
Yeah.
So and that's why suppose when I work as a hiring manager, I look for someone like who will be good at UI, who will be good at UX. I mean, such are other terms. So, do you have any experience on working at startup where you were designing all these things at once?
Yeah. So this is, I kind of refer to this as a team of one, right? You're a design team of one. It's just you. There's no other designers at the company. There's no design team for you to spread the workload or to even get feedback on the work. I have not personally been in this situation, but I've talked to a lot of designers who have been in this situation. And it seems like the best thing to do in this situation is to set yourself up for success as quickly and as fast as you can. So that might be streamlining certain workflows, like perhaps creating a UI kit so you can more quickly create concepts. Maybe it's like ruthlessly prioritizing the roadmap and getting comfortable with letting engineers design experiences a little bit, and then maybe you're doing more of a QA kind of role so you can focus on designing more high priority products. So it's all about like trade-offs, I think, and finding that balance and getting comfortable with perhaps delegating or setting up systems for yourself to make it easier and faster to support that kind of workload when it's just you, because it can be really challenging.
So, is it good for a beginner to join a startup as a product
Good
designer?
question. Yeah, I get asked this a lot. Like, I want to get into design. Should I go for a startup or a big tech company? There is no right answer. I think it's really up to you and what you want to learn and get out of the opportunity. I began my career at a very small startup. And while I learned a lot there, I was really missing the ability to learn from my peers. I was craving mentorship. I was feeling very unconfident with my decisions and my workflow. And so that's one of the reasons I ended up joining Uber, is because I wanted that larger scale design team where I could learn from other team members and be challenged in a supportive environment. So I really appreciated that early in my career. But again, some designers prefer, a more startup environment where they have more room to sort of figure it out out for themselves. And I think that's great too.
Great. So, hope you have hired a few designers in your career, right? So, if I ask you that, what are the main skill that you look for when you are hiring a designer, product designer?
Yeah. So there's no one size fits all answer here because it really depends on the role that you're hiring for and the team as well. So the larger the company, the more likely they're looking for a designer that's coming in with either specific experience or a specific skill set. So I think it can also depend on the industry. If you're if I am a fintech company, let's say, I'm probably going to lean towards designers who have previous fintech experience, right? So it's also a little bit dependent on what experience you can bring to the table. But in terms of like just general expectations, perhaps around levels, for me, I think a senior designer, what I'd be looking for there is someone who can really demonstrate that they can lead projects independently on their own and that they're not just involved in the design decisions, but that they're also involved in the product decisions too. So do they have a seat at the table with product? Are they able to influence the roadmap? Are they part of those product strategy conversations? So that's what I'd be looking for from a senior designer versus maybe a midweight designer. I wouldn't be expecting them to lead projects completely independently on their own. I would expect to be there to support them, to help them, get confidence and conviction in their design decisions and rationale. So yeah, it can really depend on the level, and I think also the gaps that we have on the team and what we need to fill.
Right. Have you ever been to any position like you have to say no to a good designer and
Yeah, I mean, like we've definitely had in my career, I've definitely seen situations where, we're hiring for a role and then all of a sudden there's a hiring freeze and we have to, turn all the candidates away. Or maybe there's a really great candidate, but it's just not the right fit, like not the right role or not the right time. So there's different like external factors as well that come into play here. So yeah, it sucks when that happens, but I just hope that we can connect another time.
let me share mine. Actually, sometimes we feel that due to budget issue or due to some other issues that
Yeah.
maybe the company wanted like that. This designer is really good, but I was not able to hire this one due to some issues.
Right.
So, and in many times, I'm not able to say why I'm not hiring you, but he's a really good designer.
Right. You
Uh,
can't give the feedback.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
able to give the direct feedback, but so I
Yeah.
cannot say that my company do not have any budget right now or that much budget. But that person is thinking, why maybe I'm not capable of achieving that. Maybe I'm not that good designers. So
Mm.
so it happens actually.
It's so hard. I've talked to so many designers in this position where they think they get a good vibe from the company. They think they're doing really well in the interview process, and then they get told it's a no and they don't get any feedback. It's so challenging. I would say, like, from being on the inside, sometimes it's out of our control, the fact that we can't give feedback. Like, I've worked at places where it's a legal concern if we give the feedback. And so it's not always that they don't have any feedback or they don't want to give you feedback or that they don't have the time. Sometimes they just literally are not allowed to. And I know that that's really frustrating for these designers who really want to grow and learn from their experiences.
Sometimes it's not the designers, and maybe it's the company or some legal issues.
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
sometimes we get rejected from other countries, like just basically for the location purpose. Suppose currently I'm living in Bangladesh. If I just apply for Canadian job, maybe they will not hire me as a designer.
Consider
Why?
you. Yeah.
They will not consider me as a designer because there are some laws, right? There are some
Yeah.
issues they want to avoid. So it doesn't mean that we are not good designers, or actually we are
No.
not there, and they have a separate, or they have some legal issues.
Yeah, it's so easy to get your self-worth wrapped up when you're interviewing, right? Like, you know, constantly receiving rejections or not getting that feedback can make you feel like, am I just not a good designer? Like, am I not good enough for anything? But, you know, I like try. Yeah, it just means that it's not the right company for you, right? Like, try again. I know that it can be really difficult and really exhausting, but see it as a good sign that that was just not the right fit and not the right place for you. And there's definitely going to be a place for there out you somewhere, and it just might take a little bit more time.
Right, great. So let's move on to the PDF portfolio or non-disclosure portfolio. So when it comes to prove myself or prove a designer himself. So when we work in a startup in a company, we have some works that we are not able to showcase to anyone, right? So in the public domain, then how can we show it? Or suppose if it's not in the public domain, as a recruiter, how you will know that I'm a good designer? How you will call me for interview?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think you have to show some work, right? And in this case, where maybe you're under like an NDA or there's a legal concern, I do feel like there's ways you can get creative around still being able to demonstrate your skills without having all of the work available publicly on your website. A very common one to this is just adding a password protection to your website or a case study. I've seen several designers do this. It just means that the work isn't public. You're just only sharing it in a confidential setting. And I think it's a good reminder too that interviews by nature are confidential. So already like you're sort of under this NDA anyway. So I think that's one thing that you could do if you feel comfortable. Another thing I've seen people do is tweak their designs a little bit by maybe omitting the client or the company. So it's, you know, they put a fake company instead. So they're sort of still protecting the identity of the company, if that's your main concern. And then I think on the extreme end is like omitting things in the actual designs as well. So maybe you're hiding certain things in the design, or maybe you're only showing like conceptual designs rather than the actual real full final designs. I think that is a lot of work and probably something that I personally wouldn't go through the hassle of doing, but it is another option as well.
So actually, when you submit a design and submit a portfolio, and we get interviewed by someone, so what are the standard screening process like? Is it the whiteboard challenge or like a take-home assignment? I have seen some companies give you 7 days or 10 days or 3 days for take-home assignment, and some company says, okay, come here, just solve this challenge.
Yeah.
Share your experience.
I mean, first of all, 3 days for a take-home assignment is so fast. I wouldn't expect anything less than 7 because, you know, we have lives too. So yeah, the take-home assignment is pretty common, I think, for a more junior mid-weight role where they might give you a challenge to complete in your own time and then submit sort of like a presentation or your outcomes of that challenge. The good companies will make it totally hypothetical, so not at all related to their company or what they do. And I think that is important because if they are choosing a real challenge related to their company, they're almost asking you to do free work for them, really. And so I would just see that as a red flag and just think about what that means to you. But yeah, that can be a pretty common step. And often I've seen those take-home challenges brought in to help fill a gap if the designer doesn't have that much experience. So if they don't have, this is why I think we typically see it for more junior roles, maybe they don't have a lot of projects under their belt or a lot of experience on their portfolio. That's not to say they're not a good designer. We just need some more examples of how you work. And so the take-home challenge is sort of to fill that gap. In addition to that, whiteboard challenges have also been seen in the design interview process, where it's more of a live like session that you might have with another designer at that company. And this whiteboard challenge is more for you to talk through your process and like how you would approach solving a problem. So it's not really on they're not really assessing you on the final like design or idea that you come up with. It's more about how did you get to that idea? What are the questions you asked? What are the steps you took? That is more what they're looking for in that context. And then of course, a portfolio presentation is pretty common where you walk through your projects. And then you might also have a couple of one-on-one interviews with some key members on the team.
You know what is the sad part? We as a designers, when the company send us a design task and give us 7 days or 10 days time, we work on it day and night, and they submit it and no reply.
Crickets, yeah.
No
It's
replies
so
that all.
frustrating.
At least say no to
Yeah,
anyone.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So this guy has spent at least 14 hours to 20 hours for a design task.
Crazy. Yeah, it's so much
You
time.
should take at least 2 minutes or 1 minute and say, okay, no, we are not able to hire you because.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say that I would not personally, I would not take on a take-home assignment unless I've at least had a call with the recruiter and a call with the hiring manager. Because I first want to know, is this job worth it? Is this company one that is worth it and that I really want to work at? And you kind of uncover that in those two conversations. And if yes, sure, go and do the take-home assignment, and you're more likely to get a response at that point because they've already screened you, like they're sort of invested in you at that point, and then you hopefully are more likely to get that feedback. If the job is like, hey, before you can even talk to us, you need to do a challenge, I personally wouldn't invest my time in doing that. That means all the other candidates are also doing that challenge, and so they're not accurately screening anybody very well. And so you're far less likely to actually get to a conversation. And I also personally wouldn't invest my time at that point if I wasn't sure and really excited about that company and that role. So if they're asking you to do that take-home assignment, make sure you have a conversation with them first.
Right. That's a good thing that we should do.
Yeah, I think so. And like interviewing is a two-way street too. And I know sometimes as junior designers, we might be a bit afraid of that, right? Like, oh, it's all they're interviewing me. But I think you also have the opportunity to interview the company and check that it's right for you. Yeah. And so don't be afraid to stand up for that and to ask questions and ask for their time.
So interview is a opportunity to know each other, how we can add value to each other. So employer plus employee. So when we have talked about rejection, another rejection come at the beginning, right? When you're submitting a resume, then sometimes the ATS applicant tracking system that actually
screens.
Tell me about something that how should we prepare our resume so that application tracking system cannot just throw my resume into the bin?
Yeah. I mean, I always try to get a referral personally. So if you are networking regularly, is there somebody that works at that company that can give you a referral? And that way you sort of skip that process, you get to the top of the pile and your application is more likely to be considered. If you're not able to get a referral and you're sort of just cold applying to roles, yeah, there's a chance that your resume is going to go through this ATS system, right? And that just screens for keywords. And so what I see a lot of designers do is they have usually sort of like a skills section on their resume and they sort of list all their design skills. And the idea is that will get picked up from the ATS tracking system. There's no way to know with 100% certainty what the keywords are, right? Like I couldn't tell you. But yeah, I've seen designers approach it by listing their skills or tools as well that they're really familiar with. So there's always opportunity to include that somewhere in your resume.
Right. We have another question for you.
Yeah.
This is like aside from design skill for a designer, just aside from design, what are other skills that you expect when you are hiring a product designer?
Yeah, I think collaboration is really important. So do you collaborate like proactively with other members on the team? In addition to that communication, how do you communicate your design decisions? How do you communicate rationale, updates to the team? How do you document those decisions that you've made? Those are really important as well. Another like bonus skill I think is around like facilitation. Like, can you independently lead workshops and run team meetings? Public speaking, can you present your ideas? So those are probably the key ones that I would look for.
Great. Thank you so much, Femke, for coming to this meeting.
You're welcome.
It's a knowledge sharing session. I have learned a lot from you, and it will be great if you just say a message give a message to our Bangladeshi UX community.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. And if you have watched one of my YouTube videos, I so appreciate it. And yeah, it's always so nice to hear from folks in the Bangladesh community. Like, I sometimes get messages from people there, and it's so nice to see that my content is helping all of you in your design careers. So thank you so much. And yeah, good luck to everybody out there that's looking for a new role.
Thank you so much, Femke, for joining. And as I mentioned earlier, I will give all the links in the description. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and subscribe if you like my content.
Yes, I will be subscribing for sure.
Thank you, Femke.
Thank you.